recording is on.
Welcome to the Extinctionati December the 5th Sunday meeting for the Eastern Extinctionati. And yeah, not many people, and the people, some of them are from the West, but anyway. All right, let's get started. So what's, is there anybody who got some agenda items or stuff that they want us to talk about? Questions?
I have no questions. I was wondering about the agenda. You wrote on the agenda that it was going to be, we're going to talk about the sigil and the manifesto. The manifesto would be interesting, I think. I have no questions. Have anybody else questions?
No questions come to mind here either. Yeah, I'm kind of curious about the manifesto and how that's going to turn out.
Okay, well, I've been working on it, not as hard as I'd like because I didn't get much sleep because of the weather, all these storms coming in. But anyway, I'm still writing it, working on it. So, yeah, I will present it and then we can all go over it in detail. But I'm just kind of laying out front and center the flippening, and then hopefully we can use it to promote the Extinctionati a bit. Yeah, so I'm the thing that I'd like to go over, and I mean, after even the manifesto, just as a project, is ways to actually survive the actual flipping, and just stuff around it on the peripheral of it. So all the stuff adjacent to the flipping is pretty interesting, and then also kind of flipping watch stuff. I see there's volcanoes in Java. I think the one in Iceland is going to blow soon. But yeah, I keep on seeing more seismic activity and volcanic activity, but the USGS insists that seismic and volcanic activity is not on the increase. It's just the reporting is on the increase, and people report it more. But if you look at the figures and the actual reporting, I mean, I look at it and I say they're increasing. They're definitely increasing. I don't know how they can stick to that story. But yeah, the number and the magnitude, I think, is increasing. But anyway, that's the kind of thing I think we should watch. And my assumption is you would always get warnings of this kind of thing, especially tectonic activity. And the thing that's interesting, I think, is that the earthquakes are getting deeper and deeper. They're some of the deepest they've recorded. They didn't think they were even possible that deep, and that's the kind of thing that I think would be alarming. But my assumption, which I'm banking on, is that you can anticipate the flipping to a certain extent, but you will get lots of signs of the Earth being in stress and stuff. So I think we should look out for those and report all those. The reason is, my reasoning is that you can't kind of prep for something like that. If you prep and it like takes 5, 10 years, 20 years, you won't be able to prep that long. So I think you have to not base your life on prepping for the flipping, apart from psychologically. But I mean, in practical terms, you can build up skills and things like that, but you can't hoard food and do stuff. But yeah, just in terms of how you actually survive it, and people asked, I think my thinking is that there's and I think that we should research it and make sure everybody agrees. But I think that there are 3 things to actually survive. The first is you need to survive the actual day of the actual event. which is probably all about, not being close to a volcano not being close to a volcano and a pyroclastic flow, that kind of thing. And then you probably want to make sure you don't get hit by tsunamis. There's probably a lot of extreme tides and probably undersea slides and things like that. And avalanches, things like that. So you probably want to think about that in terms of, and then, and earthquakes. You don't want to be in a big city because of the fires. If you look at the San Francisco fire. But anyway, it's worthwhile going back and looking at all of these things and seeing what it was like in earthquakes, and particularly, how people survived them. And maybe you can go and have a look at, like, Rebecca Solnit about the San Francisco earthquake. And you'll see the theme over and over again. One of your biggest problems is the state. That's a theme that just never goes away. In a disaster, the state always compounds it because they try and keep control. They see the world backwards. So people trying to get baby food and stuff like that out of a store are looters, and they get shot, and it's all fucked up. It's what happened in New Orleans. They shot lots of people that were just trying to get water from a store. It's like, what, you're supposed to respect Walmart's property rights and leave the water in the store? And then all the people are, yeah, according to the state, yeah. So it's like, that's something that you've got to consider, is you want a weak state, not a strong state. So there's lots to read on that, and to read on just surviving earthquakes and things like that. But the fire is the bigger danger in an earthquake. So glass initially, and then fire. And so, you probably want to be outside in an urban area. But I think you can see from all of this, you have to kind of weld it into your lifestyle. You can't, I think a big mistake to live in New York and then think, oh, well, I'll get some warning. I can get on a plane and get to my chosen strategy. I'll have a go bag ready. I don't think it's like that. I think you'll be caught out. And then the other thing is, you can't just go and say, oh, well, I'm going to go and live in a shack on a mountain somewhere. And you say, well, no, that's not going to work out too. You're going to do that for a year, and you're going to be so bored and lonely. you're going to pack that in. So you kind of have to just know the signs and know how to interpret things that other people just will not be able to interpret, and will get drastically wrong. But so what I'm suggesting is you kind of drift towards. It's kind of an art of living, and I think it's a great thing that if the flipping never happened and the theory is wrong, you still want to do this. So psychologically and in terms of lifestyle, it's everything that's missing. I have no qualms about foisting the theory on the world and promoting it, because if it turned, and people say, well, what if it was wrong and people burnt fossil fuel and had a big party and stuff, and say they're going to do that anyway. So the thing that everybody's missing, all the Gretas and Faulties and all these people that Bill McGivern and all these Michael Mann, all the thing they miss is, the first thing is hope. You want to take hope away from people. Hope is a disaster. It's poison. It's causing all the problem. Hope keeps people working at the system. They're never going to give up. So they're never going to give up voluntary, but hope keeps them going and keeps this destructive. So there'll be nothing left while people have hope and carry on trying to beat this horse to death. This horse being, of course, our planet. There'll be no survivors if these people carry on having hope. So, it's like alcoholics. If an alcoholic has hope and thinks that everything's going to turn out well, they're going to drink themselves to death. They're going to drink themselves to death anyway. But the one hope is that you can have is that everybody loses hope. Just like an alcoholic is that, one hope is that alcoholics will just suddenly wake up and lose hope and hit rock bottom. So the way to make people hit rock bottom is to take away all the dreams of tech utopia, of solving climate change, of reforming the system. You need to take all that away. And the idea of the flippening does it instantly because it's not in people's control. They need to have the control taken away. So hope is a disaster. This idea that humans have control is a disaster. We do have control. We can make things worse. The conceit is we can make things better. It's not like that. It's like you can be a little kid and roll a stone down a cliff and make an avalanche, but it doesn't mean you can correct an avalanche once you've rolled that stone. That's the thing is it's easy to be destructive, but especially because the climate is exquisitely sensitive. They think it's all robust, and the general thing is they think the climate is robust. You can kick it around, and there are no tipping points. It's predictable. It's stable. So you want to take all that away from people that say that it's incredibly delicate. The climate system is incredibly delicate. We just misinterpreting the data. And the Earth system is incredibly unstable. It's chaotic. There are massive swings, and ice ages, and disasters, and comets, and Earth flips. And so you want to take people's certainty away. It's this hubris that we have is partly certainty, and unwarranted, completely unwarranted. It's all biased. They're all just looking for excuses. They're all actually conservatives. All the liberals and the progressive humanists are actually arch conservatives underneath, like Paul Kingsworth in a way. Is just just wants everything to be nice and stable and wars to end and to have this Pax Romana that is kind of like a frozen living death. So yeah, so okay, so if you take all those options away from people, sweep them off the table, they're probably in the best position psychologically, the position they should have been in all along. It's basically a much more humble thing, and then focus on survival. If you start focusing on survival and prepping for something event like the flipping, you live the lifestyle that no one wants to live anyway. You graduate naturally towards it because you won't really burn fossil fuels for very long. You can do it. You can have a party, and I recommend you do it. Go on a Rumspringa, and because we've had all this austerity narrative that's completely counterproductive too. It's this nagging austerity narrative. And if you think again in terms of an alcoholic, the alcoholic is drinking because he has a nagging wife saying, you should stop drinking. You should say, you should reform, pull your socks up. It's like the first thing he wants is a fucking drink after all that. And that's kind of what the climate movement is doing. All these activists, they're kind of like naggy wives saying, carbon footprint, transition, oh, flights, shaming, virtue signal. And it's like, God almighty, if that doesn't drive you to drink, what will? But so we need some relief. Just go on a Rumspringa, go fly and live like a millionaire. And it's like, it'll be better in the end because, you want to accelerate the Greenland ice sheet melts. You want to do everything you can to accelerate it because once you've admitted that there's never going to be a voluntary deindustrialization, which is what it takes, is, every moment that this machine carries on, it's being destructive and reducing the chances that anybody survives. So the planet is massively degraded in terms of its fauna and flora, and the ecosystems are in tatters. And, you take away the industrial system, there's not much for 8 billion people to survive on. And so, if you go back in history and the Younger Dryas, which is probably the last flipping, very few people made it through. There's a massive population bottleneck. We're all essentially genetically so similar that the only way you can do that is from a tiny founding population. Now, that's incredible considering that the people all over the world at the time of the Younger Dryas. So there were people in North America, South America was peopled, Australia, everything, every continent except Antarctica was peopled. And we only made it through with a handful of people. And there was plenty to live on the ecosystems. The megafauna went extinct. Lots and lots of animals went extinct, but there was enough to survive, only just. And now we've got to go through the same thing with the seas are massively degraded. There's, I mean, we're talking 99. Well, okay. I mean, there's a thing called the Sheldon Spectrum, and the Sheldon Spectrum it's a phenomena they observed. It's one of these scaling laws. Like I mentioned another one that I said was evidence against Darwinian logic and the idea that evolution just progresses randomly. It's like a random walk. It's not a random walk because it pursues these power laws in terms of energy and size of animals. And another one of them, which I didn't mention, was the Sheldon Spectrum. And that says, but it's also saying that, you know, if you look at the size of organisms, you know, say from 10 microns to 100, and then you keep on going up in scales, you know, of micrometers, so in tens. The amount of biomass in that category is constant, all the way up to the whale. So they noticed this a long time ago, that it's, you know, this is in marine systems. They have struggled to replicate it on land, but the marine systems show that, you know, whatever size you take, you'll find that that is, you know, the same amount of biomass. So the amount of, at the very top orders of magnitude, then you get all the whales and stuff. If you count them all up and weigh them, you'd find that they're the same as the 10th lowest thing on the scale, which is all the cyanobacteria and stuff. And so there's a scaling law that defies Darwin. It's saying that, well, this couldn't happen if it's all random. Now, the interesting thing is that what's happened recently is the Sheldon Spectrum, they found that it's been lopped off at the top drastically. So since they discovered the Sheldon Spectrum, I think in the 50s and 60s, then it was completely intact. Since then, we've wiped out half the stuff at the top layers. So it's like, this is not going to end well. So this machine, no matter how green you make it, and no matter how many people you put on Mars, and no matter how many times you talk about solving climate change, all of these systems have been disrupted. Things like the carbon cycle, the pH of the ocean is too high and getting higher. And so all of these things mean that anybody that survives the next flipping is, you know, they really, really in trouble, because there's very little to survive on. You know, if you go out in your yard or something, go out, if you're in New York, go out into Central Park and see if you could, you know, hunt rats or something in Central Park and see how well you do with all the other millions of New Yorkers doing exactly the same thing, and you can see what a disaster we're heading for. We're deeply in overshoot, and we're in drawdown. So the sooner that the flipping happens, the better. It'll stop the agony in a lot of ways, and, you know, promote the survival of the next thing. Traditionally, what's happened in all these cataclysms, in Earth cataclysms, right from the Cambrian explosion to, you know, the PMT boundary, the PEMT boundary, and the Younger Dryas, and all these people, like the survivors, they do very well. There's normally an explosion. They have abundant resources, loads of space. It's kind of uneven. So yeah, you want to push onto that as fast as possible. Yeah, so
I don't understand what you're saying about push for that. What do you mean by that? Because I mean, for example, you mentioned earlier party planes, etc. All that's boring stuff. I mean, honestly, like I mean, maybe it's my age, but honestly, you know, jetting around parties, I found that absolutely boring. It's like drinking or whatever. I mean, after a while. So, I mean, you want to enjoy yourself. You don't want to be doing things that you don't like. So, well, I mean, I don't understand how you want to push anything from an individual point of view. Is it? I don't see what you. I don't
Well,
get it.
well, maybe for the average person, they like that sort of thing. Yeah. I mean, I could, yeah. Some other people might. I certainly don't, for sure. Yeah. I mean, it depends on what kind of person you are.
Yeah, what I'm talking about is underlying a lot of the environmental movement and climate activism is the streak of Puritanism, and it's clearly, if we didn't have a climate crisis, an ecological crisis now, that say if it was 1,000 years ago, all the people active today, they would all be Lutherans and they'd be marching in the streets about morality and stuff. The people would find a cause, even if they were in Eden, they would be wandering around saying, "Oh, people mustn't, listen to the snake. People mustn't eat the apples and stuff." But so there's this idea of Puritanism that's kind of life-hating and human-hating, and I think it's very artificial and imposed. So a lot of what the youth are doing is they're shaming each other, flight shaming and stuff, and trying to say against fashion and profligate living and stuff of the rich guys. And I think they should it would do them good to go and live a rich person's lifestyle and just see what it's like, because a lot of them are talking from ignorance. It's very easy to be mealy-mouthed about a lifestyle that you've never had access to, and you assume you never will. So a lot of this rich people and the transhumanists and their lifestyle, the extravagant lifestyle, is a kind of an envy of people that have decided that they're never going to make that, so they're going to kind of squash everybody else that is living that lifestyle. And so it makes for a divide. It makes for this, these super rich guys, and there's this cross purposes of dialogue that I think is very unhelpful, and it's also based on a lie, because all the crusties that I've seen, all the hippies and people that are really, into natural fiber and wood and preserving the planet and stuff, they're all fucking hypocrites. If you, I've done this frequently, is dangle a bit of money in front of them, and you'll feel all their principles. They're rapacious. I've never seen a rich people so into money. It's basically, I've never seen greed like a sweater wearing, Kingsnorth comes to mind. It's like, you get all that kind of piety and self-denial, and you just say, okay, well, now you've won the lottery and you've got millions. They don't give it away. They're basically hookers for $1 when you actually scratch the surface. And so it makes for this very complicated psychology in the dialogue between the two. The first thing that amazes, I think, people that have never been in it is, if you hang out with rich people, it is a kind of a dream. It's kind of a drug to be rich, to actually be super rich and hang out. There's nobody, I always kind of thought that in Hollywood, the agreement that Hollywood has with its public and its audience is that, well, we all middle class and we all kind of hate the rich, and we all kind of in with the poor and the guys below decks because they're kind of real, and the guys, the super rich we can't relate to, and they're kind of cold and horrible. So the villains are all super rich. And then, so for example, you get on the Titanic, then you get, the Fat Kate there or whatever, and she's like, oh, she's really rich, and she's but the rich people all on the first class are all boring and stuff, and she goes down in steerage, and they're all the Irish dancing on the tables, and the audience is all with her going like, yeah, if I was on the Titanic, yeah, I would be down there with the guys in steerage and stuff. And I say, like, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. You're middle class, and you've never seen the guys in steerage, and you've never seen the guys on the top deck. And so I say, I'll tell you, is all you little house slaves in the middle class, is you would go running for first class. You would absolutely fucking adore it. You would be in heaven. You would be wetting yourself at how nice it is to be in that environment, and you would shit yourself if you knew what it was like in steerage. So it's like,
I don't agree with you. I don't agree with you at all, because I've been in there. I've been when I was young.
Wait,
like you're in an urban. It's horrible.
Wait, I haven't finished. It takes a little while till you get to see what it is. So basically, in the first class thing, it takes a while. You have to actually live that dream like a drug. It's like a drug. It eventually wears off, and then you find out those guys are super boring. You find out it's like a living hell in first class, but you have to live it to actually see it. Most people, you won't just first introduced to it, you won't see it. It's only if you hang out there that you start to see it. Then you start to see a different side of the guys in steerage. But if you're middle class and you're taken into either one of them, it'll take you a while to get it. It'll take you a while to get what's going on, that people are nice in steerage, and people are kind of genteel in first class. But I'm telling you that anybody would be easily bored. The most of the middle class people I know that don't know those worlds that they condemn, they would be suckered in by them very easily. So you only get them out of your system if you actually go into them and actually see them, right? So it's silly if you're middle class like John Oliver or something like that, and you condemn the royalty and the Queen and what life in the rich and famous in Buckingham Palace. Is if you actually went to one of those dinners or something, you'd be amazed how easily you were gulled, and how fantastic you really thought it was. So it's only when you've actually been there for a while and you start to see through it that you start to see the side that is actually correct. So it's kind of like you've got it right, but for the wrong reasons. You're talking out of ignorance about saying it would be better to talk about it for knowledge. So it's like, go on a Rumspringa. You go on first class in an aircraft and stuff, and just see how fucking nice it is before you condemn it. It takes a little while to actually, and you have to be in it before you actually can give it up. So it's kind of like being a Puritan and condemning drugs when you've never had them. It's like the very first time you have them, they go, "Oh, I made a big mistake. Ecstasy is wonderful." Well, you got to have ecstasy for a while and see what drugs are really all about. And then you say, "Oh, shit, this is a nightmare." You say, "Yes, now you know what it's about." But I'm talking against this false presupposition. It's just a prejudice.
Yeah, that is not realistic, because not everyone can have that experience. It's impossible mathematically first. I mean, you can't get every individual to live, to take drugs and to experience them and then understand what they are and stop. Or you can't get everybody to go and live the jet society type of life. And so this is not realistic. I mean, a few of us might have done that. Okay, fine, it's good. But I think we can benefit from the experience of people around us. And I don't know, even though I did the same thing, I was there for a while and I understood. But I always remember my grandmother, who told me when I was very young, she'd always told me, only trust poor people. And I couldn't understand why she was saying that, because she was coming from she had a poor upbringing, but she was in a kind of a wealthy type of place. But she's always was telling us when we were kids, only trust poor people. And I had that at the back of my mind. And even I think we need to use the experience of other people. We can't all go and have dinners in Buckingham Palace and, you know, live on luxury, you know, yachts and stuff. So I think, you know, I don't see when you were
No,
saying,
okay, so yeah, I mean, no, I'm not talking. I'm just talking to middle class people, and middle class people can do it. So I'm not saying that everybody on the whole, you know, everybody in India can go and see what it's like being a billionaire, but you should try, because you know, everybody like that listen to this video could. So I'm not saying that you really go and see, you know, sample the lifestyles of the rich and famous, but if you can, you should. I mean, you can just go on a first-class plane ticket, and that'll open your eyes to a very different world. So that's 10 grand to go across the Atlantic, and it's 10 grand is worth spending to actually see what you're talking about, and you'll be amazed at what a hypocrite you are. So I think it's worth understanding all these rich people before you condemn them. There's the one
well,
thing, and the other
I
thing is,
totally agree, and I totally agree on your view on Puritanism. It's nauseating, and I understand totally that. It was just you were saying something about pushing earlier, about
oh yeah,
precipitating things,
oh
and
okay, yeah.
it's a
So just
state
one
of
more
mind that's
thing.
difficult to understand in the light of um, of what we're talking about, because is it a recommendation? Is it a form of anti-prepping? Is it what is it exactly
Yeah.
that you mean by that?
No. Oh, okay. So, yeah. So, okay. So, no, just one more thought on the whether people should actually go and try this out. So, if you, it's not a thing that you have to be mega rich to be able to afford. I'm just saying, if you can't afford anything else, just be like the Amish going on a Rumspringer. What I'm really talking about is go on a Rumspringer, because you see, exactly the same as the Amish is you can't really be Amish unless you've seen the other side. And that's why they go on a Rumspringer. That's why I'm saying to people here is don't go diving into austerity and living in a log cabin under pressure. Don't go Amish out of conviction of something which you're not knowledgeable about. Is first go on a Rumspringer and see the other side, and then you're ready to be Amish. But what I'm talking against is this current fad where everybody goes Amish because it's, you know, that's a young people's thing. They've it's based on disillusionment that they can ever be anything other than Amish. They think they've had their, you know, prosperous future, their boomer future taken away from them. Therefore, they have to be Amish, and there's this kind of hard edge on it. It's do you know what I mean? It's kind of a nasty Amish where it's all condemning and stuff like that. So I say the very first thing people need to do after they realize that all their efforts and stuff are in vain is to go and go on a Rumspringer. Just go and see what you've been denying yourself because you thought that there was hope. And then that's the first stage you get to before you realize, okay, I got it now. I understand how wonderful it is being rich, and I understand how narrow it is and how awful underneath that rich people are not happy. But you can tell yourself that all you like because Disney told you that. But unless you've actually seen it and you've been through it yourself, you're not really ready to be Amish. And so that's what I'm saying is go on a Rumspringer, go and find out what it's like.
Yeah, it probably
because
it probably helps, you know, untangle people's minds, like untangles the resentment, envy that fuels all this. And if you untangle that, then it helps you, you know, get along better in your journey to figuring the stuff out.
I think
yeah,
after that also it's not only the resentment or the envy that you could get rid of, but suddenly you get a sort of pity, a kind of
exactly.
you feel sorry for the people stuck in there, the people stuck in wealth, stuck in that life, and you look at their life and suddenly you can't hate them anymore. You can't even envy them. You really feel sorry for them. It's sad.
Exactly. But you see, the thing is, all of this all of this is about giving up. The whole point of the flippening, the psychology of the flippening is to make people give up. It's the whole key to survival in this ordeal is just like an alcoholic, is to make them give up. And so you can't give up something you've never had. And what all these liberals and stuff are doing is, in the middle class, they doing this faux renunciation of something they've never had. So I'm saying you have to be rich as much as you can, or at least be profligate, or be a hedonist before you can give it up. You can't say, "Oh, I gave up hedonism," and say, "Really, what did you do as a hedonist?" Nothing. You ate carrots and tofu and condemned fast fashion and spat on rich people and say, "No, you're a hypocrite. You've never been rich. You can't."
It's like a nun. It's like a nun who gives up on sex and never had sex. I always found, it's the same sort of dynamic. Your basic things, you really have to explore them.
Exactly. It's the hypocrisy of all piety, where people condemn sinners and stuff, and so spout the evils of sin and stuff, and say, "Well, how much sin have you actually done?" None at all. It's like they're all Mike Pences. So you're saying, so you're not really condemning sin and saying that everybody should give it up. You're really against it, and you've never had it. That's an entirely different thing. So that's what I'm talking about. Is so okay, but then talking about actually pushing it is. The idea of pushing it means just burn fossil fuel. Go and you see, the part of the thing about burning fossil fuel is that, well, this is what I see anyway, is that I see all these rich guys in their big power boats and super yachts and helicopters and stuff, and they all come out here to burn fossil fuel and live the high life. The part of what they're doing there, you can see they just complete arrogant assholes, just plowing up the place with their wake, and just they just being indulgent and selfish. And what they're on, you can see it again and again. You can see it in their expressions and stuff like that. They're on a power trip. They are literally saying, indulging in themselves. They're like, look at me, I'm king. I've got all the serotonin is oozing through my blood vessels. They're feeling really on top of the world in this kind of self-indulgent way. And so that's part of fossil fuel as an amplifier for saying that, or for your ego. So all of these things are amplification of the ego. And narcissism, they need people to see them to the point where if you ignore people, they get vicious, they get angry. I've done this a number of times. I'll tell you one thing. I'll tell you just one little story. That once in my not so rich phase, but when I was getting money from rich people, a rich person had private seats in a ball game. Basketball. So during this thing, we had access down to the tunnel, where you can go down in the tunnel to get drinks in this private bar, which is open to all the hoi polloi. While we're just coming back with our drinks through the tunnel, where all the players come through, then suddenly all these security guards come running up. They're all running, and they say, stand back and stuff. All black guys in suits, talking into their thing. And they were like, "Oh, who's coming here?" And it turned out to be Louis Farrakhan. And so basically I was disgusted, and I thought, "Oh, fuck this, man." And I thought, I'm not a second-class citizen. You're just a private individual. You're nothing. So I just told the security guys to kind of fuck off. and just carried on walking and wouldn't stand by, stand at the side to let the fucker through. And so I just turned, carried on walking. And so he must have seen me, because he went and sat right behind the hoop. And I was just across there, right behind where the players' huddle was. And I swear to God, he spent the rest of the fucking game just glaring at me. Because he had people coming up asking for autographs and stuff, and I was just like, fuck me. It was written all over my face. And here's me, I'm no absolute nobody. And here's this like famous dude. And the famous dude, you could see I ruined the entire game for him because I wouldn't kowtow. It drove him nuts. You could see he was furious. I wouldn't be surprised if he fucking took a hit out on me. He was so furious that there was one little bastard that wouldn't give him his due, or as he saw it. And so, like, that's kind of where all these guys are at. And fossil fuel is the way they do it. Is they'll use fossil fuel to just say enlarge themselves and magnify themselves, and that's what they're doing. It's a power magnifier. It's the energy of our system, and so they're using it for that. Now, I'm convinced that if, in terms of psychology, if they knew there was no future, everything they were doing in vain and stuff, and everybody had the right without, part of what they're doing is they flaunting convention. The more you say don't burn fossil fuels, the more they say fuck you. It's like Louis Farrakhan saying fuck you, you may not be allowed to burn fossil fuel, but I can. It's basically conspicuous consumption is part of this. Now all that goes away if everybody knows we're in the fucking end times. It's like, if it becomes do that if you want, but it's like it's the end times. Anybody can. It's free for all. It suddenly deflates all that behavior. I notice a lot of those guys have a dog of depression that haunts them, and they would stay at home miserable or drug induced with kind of OxyContin and stuff like that. A lot of them are on drugs to just get through the day, and so I'm convinced in my own mind that if you really want rich fucks to stop burning fossil fuels, is give them ultimate permission, just democratize it, say, go for it. We're all fucked, go for it. And that would really take the sting out of what they're doing. I don't think a lot of people in the climate movement and stuff realize the psychology of what's going on. They kind of assume, well, we're all good guys, we're all in this together, we all have this liberal viewpoint where we're all for the system and we're all basically conservatives and we all want to prop up the system and make sure there's a democracy. No, the top and the bottom don't. The very top guys couldn't give a fuck about your little life and what you want about the system. They're all about themselves, and they're sticking it to you. And I don't think that the average climate activist realizes when they have a banner up, they don't realize that that banner is actually causing those rich fucks to burn more fossil fuels. I mean, they'll say in public, oh yeah, I have offsets against my jet and stuff like Bill Gates does. But over a glass of champagne, he's fucking laughing at you. I've seen it. They're laughing at the sensibilities of activists and Greens and stuff like that. They're just using you. So permitting the use of fossil fuel is promoting it. But now, in terms of just stopping the machine, once you realize that this machine is never going to stop voluntarily, it's just never. It's not based on consumption or anything. It's based on power, and people will give up their life before they'll give up their power. So the only way to bring this machine to a halt is by, like an alcoholic, is to get it to drink itself to death. You cannot keep the oil in the ground.
Do you think psychologically such type of narcissist can become a doomer?
They are doomers. Part of the narcissism of the rich is the cynical doomerism. You can see it in people like Elon Musk and stuff. they promote themselves as optimists because they're playing to the crowd. But if you you catch them on off moments, they actually do as you see, they're very cynical about the shape of the world. I mean, the stuff that Bill Gates is doing, that everybody applauds him for being such an optimist, and he keeps on saying in this hollow kind of dry-eyed way, this kind of dead-eyed way, kind of like Zuck in his dead eyes. They all kind of numb, those people, and when they say they're optimists, they're lying. You can see it on their face. I mean, if Bill Gates was an optimist, why would he be investing in the stuff that he's investing in the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation? It's all dark. It's all dark stuff. The machines, the vaccines, the depopulation stuff, all of these things that are stated aims that look like, well, I'm solving the world's problems, as you can see, just his interests and obsessions, which he's had for decades, right? They go back, he wrote this book called The Road Ahead, which I read in the 90s. And in it, he laid out basically the fourth industrial revolution. When I read it, I didn't realize what he was saying was, I'm going to make this future. He wrote it as, this is just going to happen. This is like Alvin Toffler, like a futurist, this is probably what's going to happen. He wasn't saying that. He was going to saying, this is my life. My life's work is to make this fucking hell work. And so you can see from that underneath it all, they're ultimate cynics and pessimists. So because they're anti-life, and life is messy and horrible, and so they hate us. They hate life. They hate the hoi polloi. They hate the unpredictability. It's everything's a threat to them. And you see, for the only respite these super rich guys get is hanging out with each other, and then they compete with each other. But if they hang out with the hoi polloi, all the hoi polloi wants is money. They just want money. So you have to imagine living in Bill Gates's world. Is every miserable fuck you meet is after they've asked you for your autograph and stuff. They're kind of like, you've got billions and billions. You've got $40 billion. You could write me a check for $1 million now, and you wouldn't even know this. Why don't you do it? Is the kind of sentiment about every poor person they ever meet. Is that everybody just wants a handout, and and they completely undeserving because they, in the eyes of the rich person. So Bill Gates, if you want to see what he thinks of you, is he thinks that the system works for rich people, right? It's you pass a kind of barrier very, very soon. You only need a few million in the bank. It's surprising how quickly the world turns. But from there, you suddenly get a following wind. So for the 99%, there's a headwind, always this headwind. It's really based on debt. If you get over a few million, very few, you'll suddenly find that everything's a tailwind. So, you go from like not being able to afford a decent meal to being able to not being able to pay for a meal. People, if you get to that status, those guys don't pay for anything. Everything's free because they want they want the people's patronage. Eventually, it becomes as how what restaurants will give you free meals. It becomes the next competition. It's like, but anywhere that knows you as a celebrity, you won't be able to pay for a meal. And so it's kind of a triumph. I saw John Cleese once in this place in Santa Barbara, and he paid for the meal on a credit card. But it's because it was a Thai restaurant. The guys didn't know who John Cleese was. And you could see that's why he was there. He was there for the anonymity. But the idea that anybody like of John Cleese's status would pay for a meal in any place. But you see, you can see that he went to this little anonymous place because he couldn't stand being around people that knew him. He went to Santa Barbara because no one knew him there. And so so I'm just painting this picture of what it's like for these rich bastards, and so they despise you because you are such a sheep, right? In their world, once you get the following wind, you think you're a genius because the world tells you you're a genius. I mean, Elon Musk is as thick as pig shit. but he thinks he's a genius because everybody says he's a genius. Everybody says, oh, he's the most intelligent. What they mean is he's the richest bastard in the room. He's the most successful. But it's all luck, right? It hasn't got anything to do with talent. And so but from their point of view, they don't know. They're king of the castle. Everybody's grooming them all the time. And they get infinite narcissistic supply because of our fucked up values. And so they think that you're an idiot because it's so easy to get in their position. They think like the fact that you don't is like, you know, what kind of a despicable person are you that you're such a damn sheep? You obey the rules, you do everything by the book, you're poor, you live a miserable life, and you can't do anything. Everything you're blocked at every turn. And the door opens for them. So everything they do, you know, Bill Gates doesn't care about vaccine passports. Nobody's going to ask him for his vaccine passport. See, they won't. So it's you know, he doesn't go through, it doesn't matter what happens in 9/11. And he's never met a TSA officer in his life. He's never gone through a scan in his life. He doesn't even carry a fucking baggage. The baggage comes on a separate plane. See, I've seen these guys on the super yachts and stuff, is all their shit often comes the week before they arrive. When they arrive in a coat. So it's like, you know, they're not struggling at all. The things they're struggling with is existential things and stuff like that, and particularly on losing that position. And so I'm just saying that I want to paint a picture of what these people are like, and so you know you can get to see the psychology, because these are the guys that definitely do want to survive the flippening, and I think a lot know it's coming. So they kind of like, you know, but as the Extinctionati, we should like say, you know, well, you want people to survive, even if it's them. If that's what it takes to survive, is that, you know, you need a colony on Mars and Elon Musk and all these half-human, transhuman, you know, abominations of human beings. If that's all that survives, I'd say, yeah, well, it's better than nothing. So okay, that was one thing. But okay, so now I still haven't got into the pushing it. So pushing it means just telling people, burn fossil fuel, man. Come on, just go for it. Go hog wild. We need as much CO2 as possible, as fast as we can melt the Greenland ice sheet, because that's the only way we, you know, if you can advance the flipping, which you can, geoengineering is not going to stop the flipping, right? It's too slow. So David Keith and those guys, Ken Caldera, it'll take them decades to actually start seriously putting sulfates up there, because they have to move very, very slowly, and there's a strong opposition from the public. All of these things are negatives. You know, you don't. The oceans are hanging on by a thread. You don't want to increase the pH, and any, as I've mentioned before, any sulfates you put up there, say you drop the Earth's temperature by 1 degree. Well, you know, that's going to be 1 degree on top of all the volcanic activity. So you really just don't want that. You might really push things over the edge. But as for geoengineering, yeah, you can do geoengineering to advance the flipping. You can go and put soot on Greenland ice sheet, for example. And so, yeah, I think that we should be accelerationists from the point of view as this society needs to drink itself to death. It needs to choke itself to death. So the first thing is to be permissive to rich people, to say, like, go for it. Just be quick. Just, you know, don't hold back. You know that everybody in India and China and stuff, they're not going to stop there. So Indians have about 1/10 of the standard of living of people in America. They're going to double their population before 2050. China has half the standard of living of people in America. They're going to try and double that by 2030. So you're not going to stop them. Right? Whatever you do in terms of green tech in the West and carbon taxes and stuff, you're just exporting the carbon footprint to them. They'll say, thank you. We're glad you took the pressure off the oil price and reduced demand for oil. because now it makes it cheaper for us to burn, and that's what they're going to do.
Well, anyway, they're
given
making all
that-
the green tech. They're making the green tech that Europe is using, India and China. They're producing wind turbines and solar panels. That's where they're made. Mostly.
Yeah, but they're fossil fuel products, right?
Yeah.
So 60% of the wind farms, the wind turbines are glass, apart from like experimental wooden ones and stuff. So glass fiber is 60% glass. So every ton of glass produces 3 tons of CO2 into the atmosphere. That's not going to change. so when you see the epoxy and fiberglass, the epoxy and glass fiber. So, and then apart from that, it's steel. So steel is made, with coke. So there's a massive carbon footprint in manufacturing that they hope gets made back over like 30 years, 20 or 30 years. But the same applies to PV. A solar panel is a massive emission of carbon in the manufacturing and deployment and installation and stuff. And then you hope that it recoups that over about 10 or 20 years, and then it goes to landfill and it becomes a methane problem again. But they can't be recycled, or you can't get glass fiber and epoxy or something and recycle it. So, and then, while they're serviced, all the green jobs, they go into people's pockets, and people are not going to spend them in a green way. They're going to spend them into the fossil fuel economy. They're going to be spent on high standards of living, which equals carbon, and that means holidays abroad and flights and bigger cars. Even if the cars are electric, it doesn't matter. All the investment is in the manufacturing in terms of carbon. So all this green stimulus stuff is just a massive belch of carbon. And you say, great, as long as you're melting the Greenland ice cap, and we're getting closer to ending this game. It's if this is the only way that this ends, is people drink, basically the alcoholic drinks itself to death, then get on with it. Start plying it with alcohol.
And can even probably, well, I don't know if this would work, but getting crop dusters and dumping soot on the ice sheet.
Yeah, you can just make fires. You can just burn oil fires like they were in Iraq when like Saddam did. If you got all those oil wells that were burning, they basically just put oil in trenches and lit it. If you did that, upwind in Greenland, it's basically you would cover the whole of Greenland in soot with a very small amount of effort.
Oh, that's an idea.
But in terms of actually, I think you could carve out bits of ice. You could actually lay black strips that would essentially be like zip lines for the ice to carve out a trench and break off. So I think we should explore all of these and promote them. Just as a publicity stunt to be outrageous, but also there's also an argument for reverse psychology. You see, everybody is so keen on preserving this machine and reforming and doing the impossible that they need to see some people that are active saying like the opposite to actually see the reverse psychology. In other words, I got a friend who's quite a rich guy. He made his money out of hospitals, and he told me he made a big splash in the medical world in the UK because a lot of the things that he did, they were mental hospitals. So he got a lot of lawsuits, I think, and stuff because he experimented with people that were suicidal. So there's a protocol that you follow with people that are suicidal. he tried reverse psychology once, and then there was this girl who said she's suicidal, one of his patients, and so he said, "Yeah, go for it." He said, I will stand by here, and you have a right to kill yourself if you want, and so I'm not going to intervene." And she said, "You bastard!" She didn't kill herself. And he found that that was the best way. He suddenly got remarkable results when the results they were getting were miserable. But he got, because he was going against the protocol and the ethics of the profession, he got a lot of pushback. But eventually, I think, from what he told me, is that is the way they deal with it now. They found that if you try and stop people that are trying to, commit suicide, you get a worse result than if you just say, "Okay, it's your right, go for it," and then you kind of take the steam out of it. And I think there's the same kind of thing as a society. We're committing suicide, and it kind of takes the steam out of it, saying, "Go for it. In fact, I'll help you." And then that puts a new light on it, in terms of just this idea of trying to preserve this inhuman machine, this machine of death that's our industrial society. And so, everybody says, "No, we have to be industrial." I say, "Yeah, you do. You do have to be industrial. In fact, more so. Let me help you with that. Let me give you more CO2. Let me give you more, more fuck up.
Yeah, it's like
drink yourself to death. Yeah, let me pour you another one."
yeah, it's like rev up the accelerator, hit the gas.
Yeah, but I mean, this kind of reverse psychology works. It works like a dream. It's like maybe works too well. In fact, you definitely hope we don't make headway and everybody reforms themselves. That would be really bad outcome. But I don't think so. I don't think we all amount to pile of beings. I think everybody's going to ignore the extinctionati. But still, as much as we can, I think that's the way to do it. This stuff works because I think I mentioned once that my kids, well, my stepkids, the older ones, they have no credit. None of my kids have any credit, and debt is what I mean. They have great credit. They don't have any debt, and the reason is because when they were growing up, I said, they got to be teenagers, and I said, well, now we must teach them about debt. So, let's get them credit cards and get them into debt, get them loaded up with loads of debt, so they get, they can find out what the system really is all about. And the kids wouldn't do it. They were like, "No, mommy, don't let dad put us in debt, please, God, no." So they won't touch a credit card or anything because they were so scared of me loading them up with debt. Now compare that to all the other hedonist kids where they just can't wait to get their hands on a credit card and get new stuff and stuff. So that my kids never went there because I tried to force them down that route.
I did exactly the same, and my son is now 30. He still doesn't have a credit card because I put the fear of God in him about this thing of debt. So it works very well. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, the minute I understood, I don't even have a credit score or a credit card. The minute I understood what the hell that shit means, I'm like, no, I'm not gonna borrow from somebody unless I know them and trust them. No way.
But the same thing I think applies on a vast scale. Instead of saying everybody must reform and be austere and say, go for it, burn fossil fuels. The more the merrier. We need instead of saying, "Oh, the Greenland ice sheet is melting. Oh, we're all doomed. We must reform, repent," and say, no. Find ways to make it melt faster so we get all this shit over with.
So that's
if
what
anybody's going to reform, that's when they're going to reform. That's going to be shocking. Nobody wants. People need shock. You see.
So that's what you mean by pushing. It's kind of reverse psychology and saying to the alcoholic, "Well, here's some whiskey. Now go and drink yourself to." Yeah, but there is an addiction.
Cynicism, right?
Yeah, I'll have to think about that one. Yeah,
it's It's a shock tactic, right?
Yeah, it's because the industrial civilization is a poison goblet, and the the activists are pointing at people saying, if you drink that, it's bad, boo-hoo. But now we should just like push the goblet towards their mouth, like go for it, have a chug. And if they and that'll fuck them up really bad. You're like, wait, you were just shaming me a minute ago, and now you want me to drink this shit?
Yeah, exactly. It's the ultimate cynicism. It's a recognition of what everybody knows. Everybody knows that there's never going to be a. Everybody knows we need a massive deindustrialization. Everybody knows. They just say, well, that's impossible. So you say, yeah, okay, agree, it's impossible. So now drink yourself to death. Basically, this. So the next stop, everybody says, well, we can't stop this death machine. So, and everybody knows we can't reform it. So we can't voluntarily stop it. We know that we can't involuntarily stop it. Like Ted Kaczynski and stuff is right, but the anti-tech revolution is coming too slow, and it's probably not going to work. There's probably not enough numbers. Probably the opposition against it is too strong. It could work, but I have doubts that it could be sustainable. So you've got to bring the system down, the industrial system down, which is achievable, but keeping it down is a problem.
Do you think this reverse psychology could apply also to the situation where we're in at the moment with this this surveillance and about the COVID crisis and all this? Because I'm kind of trying to devise mind games around that too, because you're starting to, what you're saying to now at the moment when there's a narrative that we all know about, who is good in society is the one that gets vaccinated and who is getting his jabs and his boosters and everything. And I'm kind of thinking about the lines of what you say. Would that apply there too? Could we bring down this authoritarian kind of, trend that's going on to herd people into being compliant with the health system with the same techniques, saying, well, no,
Yeah,
now, I
yeah,
don't know.
I think so, because it's the same as saying, about the death camp. It's like saying you want it to be authoritarian, so saying well, nobody's going to rebel, so it's like being in Auschwitz, it's being the arch cynic and saying, look, no, none of these inmates are going to rebel. They all support Auschwitz. They may say lament the system and lament the fact that they're going to wind up in an oven, but day to day they all go out and support the system. They're all obedient. They all do their work. They all take their jabs. They all do the stuff that keeps Auschwitz together, and they refuse to rebel while they all wring their hands about their fate. And so you say, well, this isn't going to solve itself. And the next stop on this, where this is the trajectory that this is headed in, the next stop is everybody winds up in the gas chambers. They're not going to be anybody left at this rate. If that's the fate and nobody will do anything to stop it, well, then it's better to get it over with quickly. So then I'm with the SS. I'm with the guards. I'm saying, let's get more people in. Hurry it up. Let's get this over with. All these people want to die. Let's go for it. Burn them quick. Let's do this and get Auschwitz over with. And then, because once they're all burnt, there won't be any more atrocities. You won't have any more atrocities. Or if you do any more atrocities, they'll be to your own people. So it's basically saying, let's get to the point where, all this insanity is over. So I'm with the guards, I'm with the camp system, just like you are. Let's move this along. It's kind of like Fawlty was saying, the reverse psychology of Extinction Rebellion saying, move it along, we must get more arrests. Because he's thinking, arrests will break the system. All the goody two-shoes bourgeoisie house slaves, they're all saying, oh, arrest those nasty people sitting in the road, to preserve the system and let the flow of traffic go. But there's Fawlty saying, you must move faster, you must arrest these people faster. And that's a bit of a shock to people that say, well, hang on a minute, aren't arrests supposed to stop this? I mean, if we were arrested, we would stop straight away. Say, no, you don't get it. The more arrests that happen, the closer we are but the system is overthrown. So it's like saying, like, get them into the gas chambers. The faster they get them in, the quicker we can get this over. Well, that's a bit shocking for an inmate.
So it's using the anti-hope kind of thing that you were talking about at the beginning. It's just destroying hope first as a basis for reverse psychology too.
Well, it's being ultra realist. It's
Yeah.
basically confronting people with the truth. It's saying, okay, we accept all of this. So everybody's in denial. They're in climate denial, they're in collapse denial, they're in all different forms of denial. And you say, okay, I accept your denial. Then let's take it to its logical conclusion and ramp it up. Go for it. Well, that's the quickest way to bring them out of their denial, right?
Yeah, I can't remember if this is the right philosopher. He was a cynic, I think, from like Greek times, like Diogenes. Be a cynic like Diogenes in the face of these things, because that guy, that's the right guy, right? The cynic, the Diogenes, the dog. I
Yeah,
think that
lived
was
in
the
a
right one.
barrel.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. He pulled no punches with the truth. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's ultimate truth telling. It's the kind of truth telling where, you know, a lot of these guys who make a name for their clever writing, like Darren and stuff, it's more truthy than they dare be truthful. So it's like, okay, you want to play truth? Okay, let's double down on truth. And like, whoa, said I was Mr. Truth. I didn't say I was that truthful. So yeah, it's really, take it to the limit. You want to go to the limit? Let's take it to the limit and quick.
Yeah, if you go to the radical, limit of all these problems with the system, it's as ugly, it's uglier than you can imagine. Like animal rights, human rights, the environment, psychology, like it's all terrible. It's literally hell.
Yeah, yeah. It's saying like, you want to go to hell? We'll smooth the path. We'll give you the brochure. So you like this shit? All right. Let's try and find ways to give it to you in abundance. So it achieves all aims. It gets people psychologically prepared to let go. It also lets people, as I was saying in the beginning, is if they experience the stuff that they deny themselves, they are in a position to give it up, and they have to give it up anyway. The flipping is real; it's coming. So it's all a question of getting to a stage where you're ready for it. And the ultimate prepping strategy is to let go, to not be attached to stuff. So if you the way to be ready for and prepared for the flipping psychologically is to really be doomed, is to really be as a dead person, as ataraxia. So as a warrior determined to make it through if it's possible, but already fighting like a dead person for a doomed cause. I think that's the only realistic state of mind to actually go through what we're going to go through. So if it applies any way you look at it, because if the flipping never comes and we just the next step is collapse. So it's either internal collapse, since we won't have voluntary deindustrialization. What's going to happen is an internal collapse of overshoot. We're already in a vast overshoot. We're already in drawdown of resources. And so those resources are going to be drawn down. We're in a Malthusian catastrophe. So those resources are going to be drawn down to collapse and mass die-off. So we get to something like the flippening any way you go. You see, the flippening, it's more useful to shove the flippening in people's faces because it's hard to deny. If you look at the science of it, it's hard to deny. And there's nothing you can do about it. The problem with what the Greens are doing in terms of, in the environmental activism is they're trying to convince people of an argument that's very wishy-washy. It's very, you say collapse, I say, we're going to have transhumanism, rapture of the nerds, AI is going to solve climate change, we're all going to be on Mars. So yeah, your opinion and stuff as well. You can't nail it down. It's just, your opinion against my opinion. Well, the flipping isn't subject to opinion. It's not well known, so people think, I've never heard of that before. So I'm saying, yeah, well, it's been kept from you. But once you actually know about it and you go and look at it, you're going, oh my fuck. You mean this is real? Yeah, it's real. And it's basically, it's coming. There's nothing you can do to stop it. And that's the important thing, is that there's nothing you can do to stop it. There's no arguments. You can argue that the science is not good, but it's weak. The more you get into the science, the more you'll see that it's real. So, and it's very definitive, you see. So the climate catastrophe, or the social catastrophe, industrial collapse, is ambiguous. It might be a band-aid. There might be geoengineering our way. We could engineer our way out of it. There's no way you can engineer your way out of the flipping. So it's a conversation stopper. And it stops that line of thought.
Is there anyone outside the Extinctionati who are talking about the flipping, to your knowledge? Is that something that has been, I don't know, is there other people talking about that around the world?
Yeah, in secret. It's a secret thing. It's not widely known. What I'm proposing now is that
you mean like in your book, what you suggest in your book?
Yeah. A number of people know, in very strange places. They're places like the Scientologists. I'm not sure what they know, but the LDS, the Church of Latter-day Saints and stuff, those guys have infiltrated all the government, and so they know all this stuff. But I don't know the extent of it. I don't know a list of people that actually know and are working towards this, but you get strong hints. I mean, I think the whole see, once you know this, and then you can read things in terms of this, then you can see everywhere that people are, acting very suspiciously. So in terms of the climate action and mitigation and stuff, it's the governments make no sense unless they already know that everything we're doing is futile. So coming out of COP26, it's like you've got very few options. So you can actually say these guys are the stupidest people on the planet. That's no one could be this short-sighted and that stupid. So it means that basically a 16-year-old in Sweden is more savvy than the movers and shakers of the world, and who have access to all the information, talk to all the experts, have this vast fire hose of information being shot at them, have all the computing power to model all of these things. And you say, those guys don't know shit from, they don't know apple butter from baby food. And so and then a 17-year-old in Sweden has got it all nailed down. How likely is that? So you say, like, you just go back, you can see it all unfold. So if you just go back to 1985 and Carl Sagan, and go and see what Maggie Thatcher's address to the United Nations, and see what happened after that. There was a pivot. There was a definite pivot. You say, why did that happen? Well, you can see little drips and drabs of information coming out. But the guys knew early on that we were fucked. They knew in the early 90s that we were irredeemably screwed. And ever since then, they've been doing panic management. They've been prepping. They've been prepping for the last 30 years for stuff that people are only vaguely getting to becoming aware of now in the last 2. So you have to read everything that goes down in terms of guys that know that we're all fucked. And so then you start to see, well, Russia, this from the Soviet Union figured this out, right? So from there you can see, well, look at the Arctic, look at what's happening in the Arctic Initiative. You get very clear indications that Russia sees a future in the Arctic, and then you go and have a look, and you can see why. Okay, so again, you see, okay, so then that's why it's worth getting a conversation going, in a public conversation as much as possible, about how to actually survive, because you can start to read what they're doing. So, for example, I just talked about how you've got to, maybe 3 things. You've got to survive the actual event. Then you have to survive volcanic winter for about maybe 5 years, something maybe 10. Based on ocean circulation and very complex dynamics, it might be like 15 years of volcanic winter. But it's worth going back to Pleistocene and looking at the Younger Dryas and seeing. The youngest Dryas was 1,000 years of cooling, so it might be a long period. But for most of humanity's history, we've lived in an ice age. So, but you can assume like 15 degrees cooling, something really bad. Then you have a look. They're looking at all of this stuff. They're looking at what places are survivable. Well, I'll tell you, I'm in one of them. You go and have a look. They've done scenarios on. You see, they a lot of this stuff they already had in their pocket, because they looked at volcanic winter. See, after they did a few tests in Bikini and stuff, they started to realize this, about fallout, about the Lucky Dragon. They started to realize about the EMP pulse in Hawaii. The Lucky Dragon was a fishing boat where they all got sick from the fallout from Bikini. That was the first time they knew about fallout. Then they gradually started to realize there's about volcanic winter. So when they started to look at surviving the World War III, then it was, you can go and look at threads and you can see how they thought of it. And that was pretty much the conventional military view. Threads is worth looking at because it is kind of what we're talking about.
Oh, are you talking about the movie Threads?
Yeah,
I've seen that movie. Yeah,
English movie it was done on the BBC, but it was considered so horrific at the time that the BBC refused to broadcast it.
Yeah, I saw that movie like a couple years ago, and one of the scenes that stuck out to me was when the government was in the bunker, and one of the guys was like being mammalian brain saying, "Hey, should we give people the food?" And then the other lady's like, "No, we need that food to make them work." Yeah, that scene stuck out to me.
Yeah, so what I've done over the years is looked at all of those disaster plans. So the interesting thing is the ones from the Cold War are often public now, and I've seen other ones. So I knew what was coming with this pandemic because I've seen the plan. I've mentioned a number of times. Everybody has disaster plans in a filing cabinet somewhere. So I mean, at the level of the city, at the level of your county, your state, and the federal government. So FEMA and all of them, I've done, because of stuff I've mentioned, I've done stuff that allowed me to see the plans. They're all secret. They don't want the people to second guess them. But I knew all this from, I think I mentioned this before, is the first time I was alerted onto this particular problem we're having now with the pandemic is when I was in Zermatt. So I was skiing in Zermatt in Switzerland. It's one of the premier resorts, but it wasn't for decades. It was just coming back. And while I was there, and suddenly noticed there were a lot of graveyards in the churches, and they all had English names on it. And I was like, what the hell's up with this? And so I started asking around, and I quickly got the impression nobody wanted to talk about it. There was some big embarrassment, which just fueled my interest. And I eventually found, people that would talk about it. The story was, I think it was scarlet fever broke out. So it used to be the premier skiing resort for English people in the 60s. Sometime in the late 60s, I think it was scarlet fever broke out. scarlet fever is one of the things where they kick in with all these emergency management plans. And so what they did was they kept it kind of secret, but it caused such a blot on Zermatt that it fell out of the running as a ski resort and took ages, decades before it came back into vogue again, because it was such a stain on the that history was such a stain on them. But what happened was, if you go back and look at the story of Zermatt now, they say, well, they quarantine people, and it's very, very vanilla. It's very whitewashed now. Talking to some of the people there, it was brutal. It was absolutely brutal. From my understanding, is they deployed the Swiss army around the perimeter around Zermatt. So in other words, in all the mountains and stuff, all the passes, and just kept everybody in there until the disease died out. So in other words, I think they gave them food parcels and stuff. But you kind of imagine you're an English tourist there, and you say, oh, I want to go home and stuff, and they said, take one step further and I'll shoot you. That was what they were surrounded like that. And they say, like, go back to the village, we'll airdrop you some food, but you're staying here until you find out whether you can live or die with this disease. And and it was traumatic for the people. They died like flies, and only when they were sure that it had basically burnt itself out, then they opened it up. And I thought, well, that's fucking interesting, because I got to thinking, well, to actually deploy that, you can't do that on a dime. And if you've been in the military and stuff, it takes a long time and planning to do operations. You can't just tell everybody, hey, get in a truck and you're going to go and surround this place. It's like, it doesn't work that way. You've got to train and plan, and there's huge logistical problems, and you can't just innovate. It doesn't work that way. So I thought there must be all these plans in place for this kind of, and I thought, well, how deep does this go? Because, it's just like Bill Gates keeps on reminding everybody since the year dot that we've just been lucky so far that we haven't had any devastating global pandemics. And so I thought, well, Switzerland is very prepared for all these disaster scenarios. The whole of the Swiss Alps is hollowed out. They can harbor all the Swiss population inside the mountains in bunkers. I mean, it's Swiss cheese, the Alps. Going around Switzerland, you can see the entrances to these places, but Switzerland is completely geared up for war and for those guys are pretty good bet for surviving World War III and the flipping and everything. They're going to do the bunker mentality. They're going to hide in bunkers. And all the bunkers have like air filters and stuff, so they can filter out some radioactive particles, which is something, by the way, if you're doing disaster planning for the flipping, is all the 410 or 450 active nuclear power stations, they're going to be all going Chernobyl. So they're not going to shut them down nicely and quarantine them. They're going to be decaying like Chernobyl. They'll melt down. So they're going to be a lot of and that's another reason why you want to be accelerationist, is all these nutcases like Lovelock, they want to do a nuclear program. So that's also slow. It takes 12 years or so to commission a nuclear power station with a lot of local resistance as well. But they're going to do all those they're going to try and go nuclear. If you see anything like hydrogen economy on it, that's code for nuclear. And so they're going to try against the public will to try and roll out nuclear. It'll be slow, but you want to stop them, because each new power station they commission is another Chernobyl that survivors or the flipping have to deal with. So places like Switzerland will do pretty well, because they underground and they can filter out the radioactive particles. You need kind of HEPA filter kind of filtering to survive those if you don't into one of those things. But anyway, so I got based on that in Zermatt, and it's very traumatic. You could see the people were traumatized by the state response to that outbreak in Zermatt. So then I started looking over the years. I got more and more interested whenever I got the chance, and I ever got close to one of the projects I worked on and stuff, to look at these, and they all have them, and they're all horrendous. I told people before this pandemic that what's going down, and everybody. So all the liberals and conservatives, normies and stuff, they all poo-poo, oh, you know, they're going to chip you and stuff. Yeah, they're going to chip you. You're going to take that chip out of convenience. Because the way they do it is they start with the apps. They start with the apps on your phone, and they start with a collar and then the electronic collar. Eventually, you'll take the chip because they say, you know, it's the most convenient thing. It's more convenient to your phone. Because they'll have stories about people who didn't have their phone with them, and then had a disaster happened, and even though they were, you know, had the green card and pass or whatever, and so, you know, it will be sold to you. It's like Klaus Schwab. It's like you will take the chip and you will enjoy it for your convenience. So, but in all those scenarios, the reason why the right-wing conspiracy theorists got on that chip story is they knew there are a lot of National Guardsmen and stuff that have been trained in advance to do things like chip people en masse. And the systems are there, the systems for monitoring them. So I met one normie who was like horrified at this topic and said she was English and complete, you know, normie, bimbo, clueless. And so she said, well, why would anybody chip it? You could just ask for your papers. And it's like, you don't know what these things are RFID tags, right? So already they're looking at RFID tags in your clothes and the RFID tags in your number plate in the States. And the police can interrogate an RFID tag with a gun from about 100 meters. So what the RFID tag is for, if you set up a perimeter today in a place like Zermatt, that was really old school in Zermatt. What they do now is they put a drone perimeter, and if, you know, it would interrogate your chip, and if your chip's not up to date, it would shoot on sight. That's really where they want to be. They have masses of sensors. That's pretty much the stuff that I worked on, is mesh networks of sensors. So they drop sensors out of an aircraft, just out of the back of an aircraft, just sprinkle them over the grounds, the mountains, and the terrain. All these little things are self-powered, tiny. You'd barely see them. They have masses of sensors in them, and they all make a mesh network. They all discover each other, make a mesh network actually the civil response units and emergency response units can use those networks. They don't use the radio networks, and that they can use those as a local area mesh network in those kind of situations. But that's where they're moving towards. And it's been on the plans for decades that they've had all these systems, that they've been developing them, and I've seen glimpses of them. They're all horrendous. So the ones I've seen have been things like, if there's a pandemic, they will give you the choice. You either get the vax or you go into a quarantine camp. So the quarantine camp is exactly what they're doing in Australia. It's basically the same thing as they're doing in Turkey. Where the Syrians, they have a moat around them with the guard towers and barbed wire and these kind of missiles. It's basically the same as the Japanese internment camps in World War II. So you basically turn Japanese in World War II in Canada and America. They had all these. So you if you go and see what it's like living there, it's like, yeah, you just have an internal camp. They have, you know, mess halls and stuff like that, and that's, you won't be allowed out until you take a chip and you take the vaccine. And so that's the kind of choice that they give you in a pandemic. So the only thing is that this one has been a mild one, so it hasn't been very deadly. Otherwise, you would have seen that quickly. All those plans would have kicked in. The ones that are going on in Australia, they're not being invented now. They're quite old plans that are being implemented, and I assume they're being implemented as a test run. But all these things have been in plan, and people have known, especially on the right wing, because those guys serve in the military and get to see all of this stuff. All the left wing people can afford to say, "Oh, this is mad conspiracy theorists," and, you know, "Oh, you're conspiracy theorists, you're an anti-vaxxer on the right wing." So like, no, it's just, while you've been doing your social studies and avoiding the military, the guys in the military have seen all this stuff. So it's your worst nightmare. But anyway, the whole the whole point of all of these things is you want to say, in terms of the Extinctionati, is say, Yeah, we need more of this. So this holds all of the system together. You see, the worst thing of all is another fissional foul thing, a kind of a lukewarm thing, where we kind of land in this neutral place where we don't collapse fully, and we don't have the accelerated melt of the ice sheet. So we just slowly degrade the ecology um, until the flippening. That's the worst scenario of all. So anything other than that lukewarm scenario is better. So it's like, yeah, totalitarians are great as long as they hold everything and keep the oil burning. If they take us to war, that's great. You don't want a nuclear war. That's pushing it too far. But a conventional war, exactly what's happening now, is perfect. So that's why this, by the way, is all laid out by all these guys who do this kind of planning and policy. Is like the Rockefeller Institute. Go and have a look at their planning, and go and have a look at lockstep. We're in lockstep. We're in their lockstep scenario. And so they took us here deliberately. This is the way they want us to be. They want us to be burning fossil fuel. They want us to be in a Cold War with proxy wars all over the place. And it's good. A proxy war, a conventional war without nuclear or limited nuclear exchange, is great. It's great for the environment. It pushes up CO2 and accelerates the melt of the Greenland ice sheet. So you should champion everything that looks like we're heading towards the Cold War, and eschew everything with like peace. Anything is peace and prosperity and sounds like Biden is absolute anathema, because it's too slow. So you want to try and accelerate all of these things. But so yeah, if in terms of if people are locked up and stuff like that, and the rest is the people can go back to work burning fossil fuel, that's good. A really bad scenario would be if everybody actually succeeded in having a revolution, and then you had all these like revolutionary councils that implemented green policies and started to make some progress deindustrializing slowly, because it would be too slow, right?
Yeah.
It wouldn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I read that, that Desert by Anonymous, right? That essay. When I read that, I'm like, wow, this is hell. This is like the worst thing ever. Like if that scenario played out where this system just slowly degraded the planet until like everything was dead, I just like, oh, that put me into a pit of despair after I read that. And it was like, I mean, I already knew there was no revolution or, no hope of getting out of this, cage. But man, reading that and then the flippening is sort of like heaven after reading that.
It is heaven. You see, it's a realistic challenge that you can focus on as an individual. So all of this thing about individual responsibility in terms of the planet is horse feathers. Complete bullshit. You can't have any impact as an individual on the planet. You say, well, but the liberal thing is if we raise awareness and then everybody gets together and then we can do action. And so well, why? It's a collective responsibility problem, collective action problem. And you say, like, look, I've often, just to be provocative and to challenge liberals, have said over the years, well, I can drive an SUV, I can burn as much fossil fuel as I like. It's not going to destroy the planet. They say, oh, yes, it will. If everybody drives it. I said, not everybody. I'm saying me. If I drive an SUV and I fly and do it, it's not going to make any difference to the planet. And they said, yeah, but if everybody thought that, what would be the result? I said, but everybody does. So I'd be a fool to think otherwise. So everybody does think that way. So it's like, oh, but we must change, educate people. Everything about liberals is educate. It's like you can educate, raise awareness to. It's the one thing that they can't get. Their tiny little minds is awareness. Consensus doesn't change anything. This machine, even if everybody agrees that this machine is unreformable, dangerous, they're not going to stop burning fuel. It's like, it doesn't matter how many people believe you and are green, doesn't keep the oil in the ground. That's what they can't believe is, no, we can do consensus action. Michael Mann, when we have human agency, we can all get together. It's like, who's this we, white man? There's no we. There's no we in this constellation. This whole we bullshit is bullshit. It's left-wing bullshit. And the more they do this left-wing bullshit, the more they isolate themselves and like the 50%. So it's like there is no we, and we disappears faster and faster. The more you talk about what we can do in education, the more the resistance against that.
Yeah,
So
it's
you're
like,
making opposition.
yeah, you literally can't get rid of the fossil fuels. Like the fossil fuels are embedded in all of your food. There's no fucking way. It's not about driving cars. You're literally eating oil. You're feeding off of oil. You're a little detritus eating worm.
Yeah, but it's
Yeah,
also,
we all are.
but it's also that whole concept of we that you're saying about, that kind of global kind of, awareness and getting together. This is in total denial of what we as Extinctionati understand about human connections and the Dunbar number and what we can achieve as little advanced whatever apes. It's this presuming this type of thing about human civilization that has brought us here in the first place. This kind of ridiculous way of reasoning.
Yeah, the thing is that they don't realize is the industrial Prometheus is the unstoppable force, and then the Earth is in the immovable object. That's what's going on here.
Well, every action has an equal and opposite reaction, and the left wing refuses to admit that, even though they can see it happening in every action. So you can see it happening with all the woke and the critical race theory, and now you get a backlash, and Biden's approval ratings go through the floor. So it's like all the progress you make causes the resistance and the backlash that means you lose the next election. So it's just, it's like it swings, this pendulum swings left and right, left and right, left and right. And so that will swing all the way to collapse, because it holds us in stasis while we advance towards basically catastrophe. So it's like, it would be better, I've said often, it would be better if the left or the right conceded to the other side than we carry on in opposition. But they won't. The left wouldn't give up its principles ever. They would rather die. And the right wouldn't give up its conservative, libertarian, religious aspects, and the same with Islam and the Jews and Christians and stuff. They wouldn't go against their religious tenets, just like liberals wouldn't go against liberal humanism. So we're in deadlock. So you can't break that deadlock. So it can't be broken by trying to recruit people to your side, which is what they're trying to do. So for every recruit you get to your side, you'll make another one on the other side. And that's what the evidence is right there in front of your face, but they refuse to admit it, or this dream that we all come to a consensus. We'll come to a consensus at the gates of the ovens. That's when we'll come to consensus. We're like, oh, we're all fucked? Yep, we're all fucked. Okay, finally, consensus. We all agree we're fucked, and it's too late to do anything. And then, you go all McPherson about it and say, well, and we all agree we love each other. Well, I don't love you. I think it was you lefties that did this. And you fucking Christians on the right, you fucking did it. I hate both of you. And let that be my final word. All right, switch on the gas. But it's in Monty Python. The guys in The Life of Brian, they
always look on the bright.
And the guys are like bickering with each other. It's like, I say, Martha, I thought we had paid for an exclusive thing. It's like, not these hoi polloi. I thought we were going to be crucified in a more exclusive area. is all the way to the fucking gallows. This is what it's going to be.
Yeah, but
But
that was funny though. In Life of Brian, they all started singing "Always Look on the Bright Side of Life."
yeah, but the funnier thing is these are guys are on the fucking ropes. This is it. They're on the fucking crucifix, and they're still bickering and arguing and
Yeah.
moaning about this petty shit. But,
Yep.
and they're still divided. They're still divided. They don't even unite in the final moment. And so yeah, but we designed not to. So there's nothing to lament. I mean, see it. You see, then the left, the Enlightenment humanists, they start to get a bit wrist-slitty and start to say, oh, despair in the human race, and then they start hating humanity. I've seen it again and again. I've seen it recently. That they go like all these people that like all about humanity and the good of humanity, and we can all love each other and we can all get consensus and it's all dandelions and love and peace. And when they realize these people will never be dandelion, love, or peace things, then there's like fucking, then they hate them, then they execute them. Then the hatred boils over. So all that sentimentality boils over into hate. So yeah, you don't want to be on the wrong side of an Allison in the final days, because out of spite and hate, she will find a demon inside herself that is everything that is monstrous, and she currently hates. But underneath all the sentimentality and the peace and love and that is this monster of anger and hatred. So you see it in XR. They say, they sign everything off with in love and rage. It's like that at the edge of extinction. Unlike what McPherson says, McPherson would love us all to die miserably in spite, and then say, "Yeah, ha, 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 see, I was right." And it's kind of like that too. In the end of the love and the rage in Extinction Rebellion is the rage will chew up that love. Nobody in Extinction Rebellion with that attitude and the sentimentality and stuff like that is going to die in love. They're going to die in rage, and in rage against humans, right? And you see it time and again. They hate humanity for what it is, that it's so irredeemable and it never would reform and stuff. And they hate us all. They'll be the worst in the final days.
I've always been wary of people who use the word love all the time, because that is the telltale of something that's underneath that is extremely dangerous, because it's a perversion. Anyway, using the word love, and we have that actually in our 12 Desiderata Extinctionati thing. It's not something to do. It's not a word that is nice to be pronounced, and it's not appropriate, and it's a telltale. I know it. I've been in those groups. I've seen what's underlying the use of that. And you're right about Allison and the likes, because even though she's extremely, I mean, her analyses are fantastic. She's got a great power of investigating and all that, but what's behind it is something that is dark, and I don't like it. I don't like it at all.
Yeah, and with the sentimentality, I feel it's really perverse and it's based on a delusion. You gotta learn, well, I don't know if this is the right word, but you gotta learn to love life and all of its visceral uncertainty without the sentimentality. And I think I was kind of lucky in a way because I had a little bit of experience, working with wolves up in the mountains at a sanctuary. And nearly all the storybooks I've read are not zero sentimentality depictions of animal characters living in the wild and living in, unsentimental, visceral ways, but still affirming, the love of being alive and all that. And so I think that kind of helped grounded me, even though I mostly live in a city. And so I don't have a sentimental view, but I think life is amazing. It doesn't get any better than being alive.
You're absolutely right about that, and I thank you very much for giving me the idea of reading Sirius. Do you know that book about that you mentioned a few months ago about that super dog?
Yeah, I
because
found that, and I threw it
you
up
know,
there for Hugh because of
yeah,
Serious Institute.
yeah, I know, and it's just explores that ambiguity between the wild and the human, and that sort of super dog that is. It's really a very good introduction. I just wanted to tell you thank you for that book. Yes, serious. Yeah.
Yeah, but you can't say that you love humans if you don't, if you reject half of what humans are. So we're all angels and demons. We're all capable of cannibalism and cruelty and stuff. And you can't say, underneath humans are all good or something. It's like, no, it's like, that's not true. I'll put people in situations where angels turn into demons and vice versa. So it's like, it's a bullshit narrative, and it just means that you're a liar. You don't actually love people because you loathe half of what we are. So
Yeah, exactly.
for
Like, oh, go ahead.
yeah, so we went through all of this. It's basically it's Cordelia and King Lear, and it's it's basically any love that speaks its name is not really love. So the fact that anybody that's gushing about love all the time is a liar. You know that it's a cover and they're hiding something, and they're hiding the fact that there's a demon inside them that they hate. So yeah, well, where I'm going with all of this is to say that the left and right dichotomy is not a bad thing. It's not something we need correct. Humans are not broken. This is it's we don't have to accept people for their faults and go all wishy-washy and sentimental. It's part of survival. If we weren't so dichotomous, we wouldn't be on the razor's edge. And that's the key to survival. It's neither this nor that. So if we weren't both angel and demon in the same embodiment, we wouldn't be here. So if you say put life first and say life is important, then say, well, you need that dichotomous human being. But the and that's what I say we do. We are for life, and we are for Team Human. That means we're for the dark side too. Everybody wants one-sided. There's this partiality, this one-sidedness, and say like no one who is vested in black or white, good or evil, one side or the other, left or right, is going to make it through. Just not gonna. You are just not going to make it through the filter. And I'm saying that, okay, so that immediately means that personal responsibility and stuff is out. Is like there's no personal action you can take that can make it all happy families and make it all a peaceful green existence where we can carry on to the future. In fact, you're a necromancer. You're actually courting our death in that certainty, predictability, that dry, predictable future that people like Bill Gates and Klaus Schwab want is our death is lying there. They really want the graveyard. They're really anticipating the certainty of death and bringing it on early. So, yeah, from the Extinctionati point of view, is personal responsibility is acceleration. It's so like this is the guys are going to take us to the wire. The sooner we get to the field of Armageddon, the better, because there'll be more left afterwards. So the sooner we get to Dodge and have the showdown, the less the more chance there'll be that there's some ecology left left afterwards for the survivors. So yeah, that's what I'm writing as much as I can. But in
Yeah.
general, that's what I think. That's our pitch.
Yeah, that's a good thing because like if you
Go ahead. You muted.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, so you all saw like that Sid Smith lecture from a long time ago, right? Where he talked about the primary productivity of the planet and like the weight distribution of the domestic animals, the humans, and then the wildlife, and there are the little green dots. I saw that and my stomach sank, like, because if you think of the flippening and genetic diversity and all that, like, it just makes you want to burst into tears. because you need genetic diversity in those populations and stuff, and it's just, yeah, holy shit. Yeah, it breaks your heart.
Yeah. Lack of diversity. So here's the let's go back to those little internment camps, and the thing. So this is the reason why you don't want to be in an internment camp like that. So it's fine while the system can support you. So if you're a Syrian and you're one of the millions in Erdogan's camps, Angela Merkel stepped down, leaving a genocide. Leaving Germany's next genocide. Germany's next genocide, which has Angela Merkel's name in banner headlines on it, is happening right now. It's being set up in Turkey. I made a video about this. Is while the European Union, i.e. Germany and Angela Merkel, struck this deal, while they're giving 400 euros a month for each one of those heads in Syrian refugees and others, basically Armenians and Kurds and all the guys from Java and stuff. Not Java. Basically all of the guys that are Erdogan's enemies get put down as Syrian refugees, so he can get an extra 400 euros from Angela Merkel. And so here's the problem: those guys are in a shitty but domesticated environment in cages while that 400 comes. See, the problem is once the state puts you in a cage, you're at their mercy in terms of what they can support. So when they put you in the cage, they cocker the hoop. They have lots of resources, they're powerful. When they decline, you're at the bottom of the list for feeding. So the problem is when the European Union goes into collapse, happening right now, they at some stage they will get a Wolfgang Schäuble or some bean counter that says, "We cannot afford to give 400 euros to Erdogan." And said, that's when the Syrians are in trouble, because Erdogan can't say, "Well, guys, I'm out of the privatized prison business. You guys can all go free. Have a nice life." He can't do that, can he? But he's stuck because he can't keep them incarcerated. He can't afford to. And that's the problem with all these internment camps. If they have a pandemic camp, all of them. You see, if we have a really bad pandemic and they put you in a quarantine camp, that's great while everything is cool and the state is still rich and intact. If the pandemic brings the state down, you're dog's meat. You're the last on the list to get fed. You are you're subhuman. You're a second-class citizen. You see, this is the problem with making vax passports and doing vax apartheid, is you're making second-class citizens. Now all the liberals love it because they all believe in the system, and they all think the system's going to survive for another 1,000 years. We're not in the 1,000-year Reich, liberals. This system is on the way down. So if you make second-class citizens, they will increasingly become the pariahs at the bottom of the heap. So you're making the next Jews that go into the death camps. You're manufacturing them, liberals, right now, with your, "Oh, it's all a health crisis, and you people should be socially responsible, so you get what you deserve." It's like that attitude is what made the Jews into the Jews that got persecuted and gassed. So you're making the cannon fodder for the next genocide. And you say, "Well, no, it doesn't work like that." Only if the state survives. If another
I'm not
pandemic,
sure. I'm not sure. It's even worse than that, because I don't think they realize that they are self-manufacturing themselves into Jews, because they are the ones who are taking the chips and the passes and the apps and everything. So the people who are outside the minority now in Europe anyway, who are not jabbed or who are not registered, are in a better place than they are, in a way, in the longer term, because they're under the radar. They're not under the radar as much as the liberals, if you see what I mean.
yeah, well, it happened in Hungary. You see, in Hungary, they rounded up all the Jews. They did a thorough vacuuming of the Jews in Hungary, the Nazis. And the reason they did it was because the Hungarians made a mistake. They thought, the Hungarian Jews thought, if they're good guys and they comply, then they'll be nice. And so they said, okay, they didn't come in and round them all up. They couldn't have, because there would have been local resistance. They would have, it doesn't work that way. They all do this thing softly, softly by creep. So they first said, you must all register with like a 2,000, exactly what they're doing now. And they with the 2,000, rice mark fine or whatever. And so everybody did, because they said, like, well, we'll play along, we'll be good, we'll show them we're model citizens and we're good Jews. And so if we're good Jews, they can't do anything to us, exactly the way liberals think now. If you're good and you comply and you follow the rules, then you'll be okay. Only as long as the state is okay. You see, the big mistake that liberals are making is they think the state will always be there. We'll always be prosperous and you'll always be house slaves in your middle-class little bourgeois life. I'm telling you, that is a certainty. The few certainties we have in this is that life, the life you have, the privilege you have, your place in the house, in the plantation, is going away. All you nice little liberals that have jobs and, cozy little things and a social safety net and the welfare state, and guaranteed that's going away. And that's the calculation that you cannot, that they refuse to make. They refuse to face the simple fact, the obvious fact, is that all that privilege is about to go away. So once you get your head around that impossible thought, which is actually the only thing we know for sure, is that that's going away, is saying, like, when that goes away, what happens? Well, they start to decide who gets fed and who gets supported in the death of the state. So if we're all on the state teat, they start rationing who gets fed. And who gets fed is the people that support the state. So in other words, by saying that you're an anti-vaxxer and you're being interned in a quarantine camp, you've said, I'm against the system. That's a vote against the system. So you get fed last. And that's how people wind up in the gas chambers. Is while they still can extract something out of you, like labor, which they can't in a death camp, right? If everything is done over, if all the manufacturing is done overseas, all the productivity and material prosperity comes from sweatshops overseas, and then machines do all the work in liberal democracies, is like there's nothing for you to do. You can't make sacks anymore, or like make number plates or something in work on a chain gang in one of those quarantine facilities. So you are basically a drag on the system, and a bean counter is looking for ways to eliminate you from his spreadsheet. So it's like, it's how his strategies for eliminating you from the balance sheet. And it's the bean counters who have to basically feed everybody and do the logistics. So you're a logistical problem, and he's looking for ways of reducing your logistical burden on his spreadsheet. He's paid for how well he basically administers the spreadsheet, and so he's going to stack all the resources in the compliant people, which is the military, because the military is the last. The military and the security forces, they always get fed to the last, because they're the ones that are saving the guys with the spreadsheet. And so they get fed first. The guys that's fed last are the people that are against the system. Now, how it works is they'll find various ways to eliminate you from the system, and they get worse and worse until the solutions look more and more like gas chambers. And so that's the path we're on. We'll probably pull out of it because the pandemic will just go endemic and we'll be over. But you've got a good look into where we're headed without actually seeing it. So there's ample room to misinterpret what we've just been through. But I've just explained what we've been through. And so it's the most important thing, the most important favor you can do to your liberal friends is to shake them out of this conviction that this system is secure and stable and will endure. And so, yeah, the flipping is a great thing to say, like, argue your way out of this, arsehole. So, yeah, that's where we're at. Anybody got any comments on that?
I'm going to have to leave very soon, and as I'm recording too, I might just tell us, maybe we could wrap up. I don't know if you have any
let's
other.
round it. No, let's end it. Let's end it there.
All right.
Have you got time to just end it off and to just pause and end it?
Of course.
Okay, so let's end it there and round it off. All right, let's pause. All right. Okay. Thanks, Sophie.
Thank
Thank
you.
Thanks for recording. Cheers,
Okay.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Have a good
Bye.
day.